at? Where we at? What's up, people? One, two, three, four. Come on, girl. Get on the floor. Come alive, y'all. Give me what you got because I'm guaranteed to make you rock. I know I didn't have to advertise for most of y'all because y'all know coming Thursday, hell or high water, your man gonna be here. I'm gonna do my thing. But anyway, for those folks that kind of slow to the party, they don't know what's happening. What's up, Sandra? Yeah, this tonight's show gonna kind of knock your socks off. I was kind of ready for y'all this week. Yeah, yeah. But I'm gonna go ahead and uh. It's about time. It's about place. It's about time you shut your freckle face. Express yourself. What's up, people? Whatever you do for nobody else, all you got to do now. So, folks, I'm hyped tonight. I'm gonna have to cool down a little bit. Whatever you do, in a good way. Do it good. I'm working on lighting and all of this, man. I'm looking all shiny, man. I'm saying, Lord. Do it good. Man, I got so many. I need a, It's not what you look like when you're doing what you're doing. It's what you're doing when you're doing what you're doing. Oh, let me see. Let me do that, but I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Oh. What that look like? What that look like? That look like me? That look like me? I guess that look like me, huh? What's up, people? We're doing it on the moon. In the jungle, too. Everybody on the floor now. Standing up against the wall. Shake your ass like a kangaroo. So let the heart do the thing. This is the part here. Spaghetti dip pop. Spaghetti dip pop. I can't breathe. Some people have everything, and other people don't. But everything don't mean a thing if it ain't the shit you want. Express yourself. Express yourself. Oh, do it. Oh, do it. What's up, Liza? What's up, Janice? What's up? Paula Marie, Gwen. I know some of y'all, when y'all come in, man, just like black people house, you gotta say, hey. I see you, Janice. I see you say, hey. I see you, Liza. She can do that, do. I'm gonna cut this shit right after the vowels. Pat, I'll take the vowel. Let me get a, A-E-I-O-U, A-E-I-O-U. Oh, just like that. Let me cut that. Woo, Lord. That's my man. What's going on, people? How y'all doing? Let's see, I'm kind of representing for George and the folks. I can't breathe. Want to say good evening. Welcome to the show. Let everything be everything. I think I'm going to call the quorum and get this party started. Let me just start off by getting serious for a minute and say, look, I appreciate, as black folks say, I appreciate the love you folks show me from week to week. I got a confession to make, though. I used to be a political junkie. Politics and public policy was like my drug of choice, next to sex. Um, I watched CNN, MSNBC, Face the Nation, Good Morning America, Meet the Press, so on and so forth. And certain people I would just follow them because I liked the way they did it. But despite being a political junkie, I hated when they came out with this whole 24-hour news thing. I hated it from Jump Street. Only thing I hate more than 24-hour news cycles is 24-hour sports cycles because the sports networks turn sports into a soap opera. With the 24-hour news networks, news was no longer Walter Cronkite and just the facts. News became sensationalized. It became drama-laden stories that were created to tug at your heartstrings. But more importantly and sadly, they force you to pick a side and they pitted people against each other. But I'm glad to say, because of delusional Donnie in this administration, my addiction is over. And I know after the 2020, you folks are tired of hearing about it too, but I'm here to tell you what I got to tell you because, if I got something to say, it must be true. In the midst of my research this week, I realized that tomorrow is the 19th anniversary of 9/11 and the Twin Towers falling and World Trade Center in New York. Then I thought about how we bonded together as an entire country, a community, one nation. It was truly one nation under God against this common enemy. And we found out that this enemy was bin Laden and his extremists. Then I thought about every year how we honor the people that died during 9/11, those people that died as a result of being on the plane, those firefighters and first responders that died as a result of inhaling all of these toxic fumes and asbestos and whatever else that killed them. And naturally, I thought about how this president and some police want to dismiss those unarmed Black folks, especially Black men and brown men, who've been senselessly killed at the hands of individuals who took an oath to protect and serve. So tonight we're going to talk about those three things. Tonight we're going to talk about, I call this podcast 9/11 Patriotism, BLM, Black Lives Matter in 53 Days. So let's do this. Let me just say, I cannot wait. Lord knows I cannot wait to have 2020 election behind me. To have 2020 in the rearview mirror is more than, and the changing of the guard in the White House, I just can't. I'll be happy as a pig in slop. I almost said a punk in Boys Town, but I won't say that. You've heard me say time and time again how Joe Biden is the one with mass appeal who can take down Trump, who can dethrone Trump. You heard me say that there are many wild cards in the deck that can affect the outcome of this election. You've heard me talk about outside interference like Russia and China and Korea and Iraq and Iran and those other countries that would love to see America implode and destroy itself. So now you're asking, how will these outside agitators do that? How will they achieve that goal? How will they interfere in this 2020 elections, and how do they profit from another 4 years of what I call delusional Donnie, Trump thin skin? The main way that they can affect the outcome of this election is by reshaping the narrative and creating stories that subconsciously influence what we think. You bombard the consciousness, the subconsciousness, with these images and this imagery and these ideas, and sooner or later, it's like watching a commercial. I have no desire to have a Burger King Whopper, but to watch that commercial ad nauseum, it starts your digestive juices flowing, and the next thing you know, you want to try that, and it's never as good as it looks on the commercial. And the same thing holds true with this outside interference. They create these stories and they create these images that makes you forgive delusional Donnie and makes you kind of despise Joe Biden. They achieve these goals by funneling money into negative ads that misrepresent, like Joe and Kamala. we They call them smear campaigns, but lately we see police organizations, we see targeted black folks, and we see brown folks who've been kind of propped up, and they're paid money. We know they're paid money because we know they're not speaking from the heart to repaint the picture of delusional Donnie. Most notably was Muhammad Ali's son, Muhammad Ali Jr., and then this Hispanic wife of this cop who was killed in the line of duty. Ironically, she probably has some relatives who are not welcome in the country here. And unless she tells somebody, if she travels outside of that jurisdiction where her husband is well known, she's going to deal with the same problems other Hispanics deal with. So we know, we feel for any person that loses their life protecting us or serving us or what have you. That's why we celebrate year in and year out the people of 9/11. We see these commercials and smear campaigns that misrepresent Joe Biden's stand on police reform. I call it performance, not reform, because it's the performance of your duty that either you're doing to the utmost of your ability and you're glowing in, or there's a dereliction of duty when you're not doing what you were hired to do. So they take sound bites and they kind of reshape them, bits and pieces, to say that Biden wanted to defund the police. No, we're talking about police reform. Um, it's targeted primarily at black law enforcement officers. These are some of the guys that are sitting on the fence, and women, because their livelihood depends on carrying their gun and their badge. So if they start to feel some type of way, they may change how they vote. They may change what they do when they go inside the booth um, in November. So it's targeted at them. It becomes successful. The smear campaign becomes successful if it can change 10% of those law enforcement officers. If it can frighten 10% of those Republicans who are tired of Trump shenanigans, but are afraid of having no police when they dial 911. And you remember a little while back, they had this kind of blue flu where they were slow about answering calls for that particular purpose, of course. If this is, and I promise you this is going to be a close race, the smear campaign is successful because it can keep Joe from having a runaway, and those people that Trump has put in key positions will come into play, especially those people that are electoral delegates. If 10% of police get in the booth and they vote badge blue instead of Democratic blue, it could be the thing that shifts this election in delusional Donnie's favor. So let me say that one more time. If 10% of all law enforcement, we're not talking about those racist ignoramuses that were already, secretly looking for a reason to shoot and kill black people. We're talking about those good cops who are fearful of losing their livelihood. We're talking about some of those black police who feel more blue than black. So if they get into the voting booth and they vote badge blue versus democratic blue, then we all up the creek without a paddle. So let's talk a little bit about badge blue and what I call patriotism. Having served in the Marine Corps, the hardest thing to do is to be black and be a patriot. Let me say that again. To be black and serve in the military or law enforcement is next to impossible. As a U.S. Marine, I made enemies because I didn't fit into this narrow little box or definition of who they thought I should be. And these are the people in power, mind you. These are some of the small-minded people that are put in a position and they're scared shitless because this is all that they can do. And here comes somebody who rocks the boat or tilts the apple cart. Coming from New Orleans or any urban area, there's a stereotype that you're primed to be in the infantry. They think you're so accustomed to seeing trauma and drama and guns and debt and what have you that you're not going to freeze up. But I had something different in mind. I wanted to become a doctor and a lawyer. I wanted to get an MD and a JD. And that's the same thing. When we're too ambitious for the powers to be, we become more of a threat than we are an asset. So they tell you things like, just be quiet and carry a rifle, stand a post, everything's going to be okay. What's your first general order? To quit my post only when properly relieved. Well, shut up and remember that. To walk your post in a military manner, that's what you should be doing. Do you see the parallel? Some of the same things are happening now. This is the same problem that America has had with the black man since the beginning. Whether it was Crispus Attucks, whether it was George Washington Carver, whether it was Benjamin Banneker, who created an almanac just by staring at the stars, so forth and so on. It kept breaking the mold of 3/5 of a man. And when you dispel the myths, you are a threat. You're a threat to everything that they believe in. Those lies that they tell themselves, and it's not all. But the thing about power is people have a tendency to capitulate, to bow down to injustices because they don't want to fight the power. America's had this problem forever with us, the black man. We're groomed to be beasts of burden when we aspire to be more than that, when we upset the apple cart, unless we prove that we will bow down. It makes it impossible to love this country that doesn't love you the way you love it. It makes it impossible to wear a uniform with pride, knowing that when you wear this uniform, when I tell someone I'm a veteran, the first thing they say is thank you for your service. But if they see me come up with my hat turned backwards because I just came from the gym and I'm a little sweaty or I haven't shaved today, I'm not treated the same way. So this is the problem. Case in point, when we think about the best example of this is Ben Carson. Carson has a medical doctorate. On top of that, he's was a renowned brain surgeon. So what job does Trump give him? Does he make him Secretary of Health and Human Resources? Does he make him Surgeon General? Does he make him Secretary of the Veteran Affairs and oversee the veteran hospitals and what have you? No. He insults the man's intelligence by making him Secretary of a HUD, Housing and Urban Development. This is a job you could do with a bachelor's. So This is the same thing. Shut up and carry a rifle. Just be quiet. Don't make no noise. Don't make no waves. Do what we tell you and you can stick around. You can be in this number. So when you're not being paid to think and you've got all of this education, when you're not being allowed to think and you've got all of this intelligence, it's only a matter of time for most people. And let's think about it. Trump has had more turnover than the last four presidents combined. Said even Omarosa has been kicked off of his fantasy reality show, White House Funhouse, or whatever he calls it, nonsense. But Uncle Ben's been hanging in there, shucking and jiving. And I don't know what he's doing, but every time you hear him talk, it sounds like he's on something. Let's just move on before I say something. Last week, I introduced this thing I call This or That. So we talk about things that we gonna diss, things that we think are kind of fat. Engine number 9 on the New York track. You can get with this or you can get with that. You can get with this. So this we getting rid of. So let's talk about Biden. Biden shit things up this last week. What he did, he said that Edison did not invent the light bulb. He told the truth. It was one of Edison's quote unquote assistants. I don't even think they called him an engineer, but he was some type of engineer slash inventor slash genius who came up with these things and had the patents on them, but Edison's name went on it because Edison was paying his salary. Fat, very fat. I've been saying all along that Joe has nothing to lose. It makes him dangerous, but it makes him the perfect candidate because he doesn't have the same aspirations as some of these other people. But I won't get into that this week. That was fat. That was very fat. Trump, on the other hand, Trump had an interview with Washington Post's Bob Woodward of Watergate fame. If you remember back, it was Bernstein and Woodward who discovered the Watergate break-ins. And they became famous because of this investigative reporting, and it forced Nixon to resign. Back in February, he spoke with Trump before we declared a quarantine, and we declared that Corona was as deadly as it is. Delusional Donnie admitted on tape to Bob Woodward, that coronavirus, the COVID-19 virus, was 20 times worse than the flu, and that he always intended to play it down. He said it was because he didn't want to create a panic, but he also talked about pushing the economy. He didn't want to see what it did to Wall Street. So that's what he was most concerned about. Double this. On the other hand, Biden did an interview the other day where he gave a detailed plan for minimizing the effects of the coronavirus and managing it better than it is being done now. This plan he's going to enforce, he's going to implement on day one of taking office. For that, I have to applaud it. So that's definitely fat. Again, the con to that is despite mismanagement of the virus, despite record unemployment, despite civil unrest and hate being greater than it's ever been before, despite Russians putting bounties on American soldiers and servicemen, Despite nepotism and cutting taxes for the wealthiest 1 to 3%, while most Americans are wondering how they're going to make it through this quarantine and struggling, delusional Donnie's Kool-Aid drinking followers are strong and they haven't wavered. And some people are still sitting on the fence. If that's not a diss, I don't know what is. There's still people, there's still police who don't see anything wrong with the disparity of arresting an armed white murderer with an assault rifle in their hand versus killing an unarmed black man with the same old, no pun intended, trumped up lie, I feared for my safety. I deplore kids taking pictures with the middle finger. So to those people, I'm just say read between the lines in stereo. That's a diss of major proportions. All children are back in school, but there's still doctors who are shirking their responsibilities of first doing no harm and giving patients the best treatment humanly possible. For that, being a healthcare professional, I gotta diss it. My last diss and my worst diss is our loved ones are still being warehoused. They're still being put in ICUs and critical care units, and those that are in assisted living facilities. They're forced to die alone. And nobody's doing anything. On the other hand, I'm a dog lover. I'm not too crazy about cats, but I'm a dog lover. Every time the ASPCA commercial come on, I cringe. These people advertising $19 a month to take care of a dog when some people don't even know how they're going to pay their rent. America and their dogs and their disdain for people of color. Truly a diss. We took better care of patients when they had MRSA, when they had SARS, when they had different types of flu, when they had the HIV and AIDS. Who remembers Live Aid for AIDS? They didn't wait on the government to do things. There were all of these, that was We Are the World. That's what it was all about. We are the world. All of these celebrities and performers came together to do something so that we could have money for research, so that we could have money for treatment, so that we could have money to come up with, so they hit this problem, the AIDS epidemic, from every corner. More importantly, they didn't force AIDS patients to die alone. That's the most inhumane thing that you can do to anyone. Just put them in a room, turn off the damn monitor, and wait for them to expire. Last week I came up with 2 different segments. I came up with this or that, and I came up with the last word. This week I'm going to make the last word into a little bit of an editorial because this is truly what I had to say this week. There are only 53 days left until November the 3rd. I have to admit that I stopped listening to the polls because they're almost as depressing as the coronavirus stats. We have debates coming up shortly, but truthfully speaking, if anyone is still straddling the fence, they're probably going to boot and flip a coin and say, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Never in my 60 years have there been so much uncertainty, so much fear, so much hate and anger surrounding politics in a presidential election. Never has such a coward commanded so much respect from his minions, other than Jim Jones drinking that Kool-Aid, and was so unpredictable and unable to be managed by his enemies as this idiot? All I know is Biden has to win. He just has to. Tomorrow is the 19th anniversary of the falling of the Twin Towers in the World Trade Center in New York. As Americans, we use slogans like "Lest we forget," or "Remember our fallen," or "Never forget 9/11." I left the DC area in 2000. I went on to bigger and better things. I started my own company and I did this and I did that. But I was working an assignment in Columbia, South Carolina on December the 11th, 2001. I walked into the lounge of the break room and I saw the plane strike the first tower. And I almost left out the break room. Then I heard the horror in the announcer's voice. And I thought it was some type of publicity stunt. I thought it was like Orson Welles and Invasion of Mars. That's what I thought. But then something told me, stand still for a minute. So I stood there and I watched. And as the plane hit the second tower and I saw the smoke, it took me a minute to wrap my head around it. These buildings are actually falling? I did not believe that an airplane could topple or bring down a skyscraper. I just couldn't wrap my head around that. I went to the TV and I changed the channel because I just couldn't make sense of it. And it was on every channel. So then I said, this is true. These two buildings, these two huge skyscrapers are now nothing but rubble. And then I couldn't see anything. I couldn't hear anything. Just leaving NNMC, I look back and now they're talking about a plane hitting the Pentagon. When I first moved to DC, I lived in Arlington on Glebe Road. It's the next stop up from the Pentagon on the subway station. I could actually see the Pentagon in the distance from my balcony, my 12-story balcony. So now I'm thinking about my people, the people that are trained back at NNMC. I'm thinking about all of those people that are doing these jobs in places like the Pentagon and Bowling Air Force Base and Roslyn and all of these things. And I called back up there and I said, hey, man, 301-295 NNMC. I said, hey, what's going on? Yeah, man, this is Hank. Who's at the Pentagon today? Is anything, what are you guys being told at Bethesda? And I just wanted to find out what was going on. And they were under radio silence. So I knew more from the outside than they did from the inside, because at that point, they don't want to cause panic within the ranks. So they're controlling all of this information. And then the phone call just dropped. And I said, damn, does this mean that a plane hit the hospital in Bethesda? Technical difficulties, people. Or what? I couldn't understand what was happening. So what did I do? I just stood around. Nothing else happened the rest of the day. All we kept doing was getting these reports. Suddenly, I felt like a Marine. I felt like I had deserted my post. In true superhero fashion, I got sick to my stomach. I got knots. I kept feeling like somehow I could have made a difference had I been there. I know it's foolish, but that's the way I felt. Then the plane went down in Pennsylvania. Now I'm like, what the? It's that same old feeling. It's the same old feeling. I felt the same way when I heard about Trayvon Martin being killed. I didn't see Trayvon. I saw him as Trayvon's mother or father would have, as though he were one of my sons. Because I know my sons. Neither of my three sons would back down or run away from someone pursuing them. So, to the people who tell us to just get over it, to those people who selfishly say all lives matter when it's Black lives that are being taken, I remind them to think of 9/11. Remember how you felt when you did not know the difference between a peaceful Muslim and a radical extremist. When you remember 9/11, imagine George Floyd. Remember Ahmaud Arbery and the countless others who've been senselessly slaughtered by a terrorist with a badge and a gun. When you think of Osama bin Laden killing innocent people, remember first responder Breonna Taylor sleeping in a bed and waking up in heaven. Never knowing what hit her. Then put yourself in a Black parent's place. How would you feel if your skin crawled? How would you feel if you got knots in your stomach every time your son left the house to jog or go to the store to buy a bag of Skittles and a bottle of tea? Think of Jean sitting on his goddamn sofa eating ice cream when he was shot and killed. How do we feel? How do we tell a good cop from a bad cop? How do we respect a system that arrests an armed coward and gives him a glass of water while he's carrying an assault rifle? Or you take a murderer into custody who's just slaughtered 9 people in the church praising the same God you asked to bless Americas. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. God damn it, Black Lives Matter. Thank you, folks, for tuning in tonight. Thank you for being with me. I'm going to just cut it short. That's enough. I've had enough. I know you've had enough. We got 53 days. We got to hang in there. We got to make sure that this idiot is out there. So each one reach one to teach one so that we can get rid of this evil one. Go to my YouTube channel, subscribe, click the bell. It'll notify you every time I put up a video. I'll be here next week. I'll see you guys here. Same Baptiste time, same Black Lives Matter place. With that, as always, good night, people. Much love. One love.